dust. The morbid elements in this novel may be due to Dickens's own near encounter with death whilst writing it. Having had a break on the continent for his nerves, Dickens was involved in his return journey by train in an accident at Staplehurst in Kent. His train was derailed whilst travelling over a viaduct. 10 passengers were killed and 40 seriously injured. Dickens heroically helped to rescue and comfort the injured, and risking his own life, recovered from the shattered carriage he had been occupying, the episode of our mutual friend he had been writing. He had rescued Ellen Ternan, too, who had been with him in the carriage. Ellen, a shadowy figure, seems not to have responded to Dickens as he would have wished. She was, after all, only 26, and he was 53. The romance of Bella Wilfer and Rokesmith in Our Mutual Friend may perhaps reflect the progress or otherwise of Dickens's own love affair. The successful conclusion of the romance, and Dickens somewhat obsessively dwelling on the details of the developing intimacy between Bella and John, may represent a large dose of wishful thinking on the author's part. Likewise, the other romantic thread of the novel, where a fine gentleman, Eugene Wrayburn, is irresistibly drawn to a working-class girl, Lizzie Hexam, may be a personal fantasy for Dickens. As he puts it in Book 4 of this novel, "Oh, what a bright old song it is, that, oh, 'tis love, 'tis love, 'tis love, that makes the world go round."
The River Thames and pollution. In these times of ours, though concerning the exact year there is no need to be precise, a boat of dirty and disreputable appearance, with 2 figures in it, floated on the Thames between Southwark Bridge, which is of iron, and London Bridge, which is of stone, as an autumn evening was closing in. The figures in this boat were those of a strong man with ragged, grizzled hair and a sunbrowned face, and a dark girl of 19 or 20, sufficiently like him to be recognizable as his daughter. The girl rowed, pulling a pair of sculls very easily. The man, with the rudder line slack in his hands and his hands loose in his waistband, kept an eager lookout. He had no net, hook, or line, and he could not be a fisherman. His boat had no cushion for a sitter, no paint, no inscription, no appliance beyond a rusty boat-hook and a coil of rope, and he could not be a waterman. His boat was too crazy and too small to take in a cargo for delivery, and he could not be a lighterman or river carrier. There was no clue to what he looked for, but he looked for something, with a most intent and searching gaze. The tide, which had turned an hour before, was running down, and his eyes watched every little race and eddy in its broad sweep as the boat made slight headway against it or drove stern foremost before it, according as he directed his daughter by a movement of his head. She watched his face as earnestly as he watched the river, but in the intensity of her look there was a touch of dread or horror. Allied to the bottom of the river rather than the surface, by reason of the slime and ooze with which it was covered and its sodden state, this boat and the 2 figures in it obviously were doing something that they often did, and were seeking what they often sought. Half savage as the man showed, with no covering on his matted head, with his brown arms bare to between the elbow and the shoulder, with the loose knot of a looser kerchief lying low on his bare breast in a wilderness of beard and whisker, with such dress as he wore seeming to be made out of the mud that begrimed his boat, still there was businesslike usage in his steady gaze. So with every lithe action of the girl, with every turn of her wrist, perhaps most of all with her look of dread or horror, they were things of usage. "Keep her out, Lizzie. Tide runs strong here. Keep her well afore the sweep of it." Trusting to the girl's skill, and making no use of the rudder, he eyed the coming tide with an absorbed attention. So the girl eyed him. But it happened now that a slant of light from the